Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and it's spooky season. Halloween is upon us once again, and as usual, this is my series of annual horror movie reviews where I select several random older movies that are distinguished as horror and review them. And because I caught COVID last year, I could only review 2 movies and do the Halloween ranking list. So this year I'm going to make up to it by reviewing the movies I had planned for this year, but also the ones that I couldn't review last year. So without further ado, let's get things started. Yes, even though I reviewed this movie 10 years ago, I have a personal rule on this channel where any older movies that I review in 2013 get the opportunity to be re-reviewed again now that I have more of a confident style. And plus, this is a movie that is just so bizarre, so wacky and insane that one review can't do it justice. So it's time to do an updated review for Nobuhiko Obayashi's 1977 cult classic, House, which basically has the simplest plot you can imagine. A schoolgirl, along with her 6 friends, decides to go on a vacation to a small Japanese village to visit the main character's aunt, and she lives in this old haunted house which is just crazy. Describing the plot for this movie doesn't even begin to do it justice because it sounds like a simple cabin in the woods type movie, pretty much like the Japanese Evil Dead, except as crazy as Evil Dead 2 can get, this movie blows Evil Dead 2 out of the water and continues to prove my theory that nobody makes crazy, insane movies like the Japanese do, because this is as crazy and insane as a horror movie can get. When I did my old review in 2013, I reviewed that from somebody who had just watched it for the first time, and I've seen it several times again since that review. I saw it back in college a few months after I did the review, but not as part of a class. The film club was just like, hey, it's a movie night, we're hosting this movie here, House. So I went and saw it, and it still blew my mind just as it did the first time I saw it. I rewatched the movie last year when I was originally supposed to review the movie last year, and then I rewatched it again. And every time there's always something new to admire about this crazy, bug-nuts, insane movie. And what I really love is that this was pretty much the result of Toho approaching Obayashi and asking him to make a big summer movie like Jaws. I don't know how in the world Toho imagined that this movie would be even close to Jaws, because Jaws is a monster movie. This is hard to describe in terms of what it actually is. While this movie was a hit in Japan financially, it was a critical flop. The critics hated this movie when it came out, but much like with John Carpenter's The Thing, it's gained more appreciation throughout the course of history, and while this is probably not among one of the greatest horror movies ever made, it's certainly one of the most impressive horror movies out there, and in terms of wacky, bizarre Japanese horror, this is probably as wacky as it gets. Every special effects technique that was available in 1977 is pretty much used in this movie, from stop motion animation, to blue screens, to superimposed images, to animation. It's got it all. And while a lot of the special effects may be crude and not like super realistic, it's not meant to be, because this is supposed to be more of a dreamlike state. And in fact, Obayashi's daughter was partially responsible for a lot of the ideas for this movie, which is funny because something that critics will often say when they dislike a movie is, man, did a 10-year-old write this? Well, in the case of House, yes, and we are so grateful that a 10-year-old actually contributed a lot of the ideas for this movie, because the main characters of the movie are teenagers. While they're older than Obayashi's daughter at the time, it definitely has that childlike wonder and look to it. There are sequences where the movie is practically a dream. Even when there's nothing insane happening on screen, when it's a very subtle movie, it has this beautiful dreamlike look to it, and every frame of this movie is just gorgeous. The characters all have distinct and unique personalities that make them all memorable. Much like with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, these characters are mostly defined by their names. You have Gorgeous, the lead character, who is basically gorgeous. That's the best way to put it. You have Mac, who just eats constantly. You have Prof, or Proof, who pretty much is the smart one. She always has glasses. You have Fantasy, who always goes into dreamlike states. And funny enough, she's the first one that witnesses all the crazy things that happen in this movie, which I think is a stroke of genius. The fact that this character is the first one to witness these horrific things, but nobody believes her because she has a tendency to just daydream. So for all they know, she could be making this up. But of course, as the movie goes along, the other girls start to believe her to the point where Fantasy may as well quote Nightmare on Elm Street. Now do you believe me? While this movie is often classified as a horror film, it's not really all that scary. I mean, maybe to a kid this would be scary because a lot of the ideas came from Obayashi's daughter, as I mentioned beforehand, but it's more of a horror comedy in a way, because the first time Fantasy encounters something unusual is when she finds Mac's decapitated head, where a watermelon is supposed to be. And her facial expression when she finds Mac's head is hilarious. In terms of some substance on this movie and what it's actually about, when I watched it last year before I was supposed to review it, I watched it going, I finally get this movie. And then I watched it again, I'm like, I don't get it anymore. But there is actually some substance to take in with this film, because you could make the argument that all of this is a dreamlike state in Gorgeous's mind, because the movie has that dreamlike look to it, even when it's bug nuts insane. And it all stems from the fact that Gorgeous was supposed to spend her summer with her father, but when his new wife came into the picture, Gorgeous is not having it because she feels like her father betrayed her mother, and she basically writes to her aunt that she hasn't been in contact with since her mother's funeral. And then this white cat shows up at the exact same time that Gorgeous is writing to her aunt. And that would explain all the bizarre moments that happen throughout. It's just a dream in Gorgeous's head. That's at least what I got from this movie. There's also a plot detail where every time one of the girls gets killed, Gorgeous's aunt starts becoming younger and younger. When we're first introduced to Gorgeous's aunt, she's in a wheelchair, but soon after Mac is killed, she manages to stand up with no problems at all, and you're just like, wait, you mean you could walk this whole time? No, she couldn't, because you could make an argument that for every girl that's killed, their life force gets sucked into the aunt. And by the time we get to the end of the movie and it's just Gorgeous, you could interpret that as still a dream, or the aunt has become Gorgeous. I don't know. That last part I'm not so sure of myself, but having the entire movie be in Gorgeous's mind in a dreamlike state, that makes a lot more sense. And I'm wondering if other people would get that impression as well. At the end of the day, whether you understand this movie or not, House is truly a masterpiece. It's visually stunning, it's ambitious for the type of movie that it is. It's funny, it's got some unbelievable imagery, memorable moments, the characters are all very likable, and every time I watch this movie, there's always something new to discover that I never got before. I would say get off your ass and go see it right now. It's one of those movies that if you like crazy foreign films, this is right up your alley. This is something that you probably should have seen at some point if you're into that kind of stuff. And again, the fact that this was supposed to be Toho's answer to Jaws is so funny. That just cracks me up. Yeah, it's just an absolute joy of a movie. And I can't see myself going through each Halloween season without watching House. And there you go, that's my review for 1977's House. Now the way this year is going to go in terms of movie reviews, since I'm making up for last year, I'm going to be reviewing movies every Monday and Friday of October. So my next retro review will be this Friday, and I'll be talking about John Carpenter's They Live. I was supposed to review this movie last year as well, but the day I was watching it and prepped for the review, that's when I got COVID. So Yeah, this Friday, I'm finally covering They Live. But until then, I want to know what you guys think about House. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads. I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, have a good day, and take care of yourselves.